Hey guys, welcome to Bottom Table Tyrants, and it's Leland and Josh, and we are going to talk to you today about some questions that Josh and I came up with about GM consistency with the rules. So everyone has different opinions on it, and I guess everyone has different tactics for trying to do that. Also, before we get started, I want to let you guys know we are going to be at Adepticon. That runs in Chicago from March 22nd to the 26th. I'm going to be running RPG games on the 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Those are going to be Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory, and also the Warhammer Age of Sigmar Soulbound. I didn't say that in the other videos, but that's what those are going to be. And the registration is January 8th, so it's coming up pretty quickly. I'm going to try and post this video by tomorrow, which is going to be Tuesday the 3rd. So you only have a few days, and registration opens at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you don't jump on there quickly, all the events at Adepticon fill up really quickly. So if you want to come play with me, there's 5 seats per event that I'm running for the 4 different games that I'm going to run over those 3 days. But if you want to run RPG stuff, pull up the RPGs and register. It's only $5 per play, and we'd love to see you guys there. Come see the Tyrants in Chicago at Adepticon. All right, guys, today's question is how to maintain consistency as a GM with your group. And I would say this as mainly in rules is what I'm thinking of. Are you thinking of like as story and any other items or mainly
story,
through rule set?
Yeah, story. You want the story to be consistent. Mm-hmm. That's a no-brainer. It's the rules that are very easy to not be consistent with.
Yeah.
Because, for example, let's say... Well, I'll say this. As a DM, it's very easy to not remember you allowed something from previous session, but then allowed something next session.
Yeah.
But as a player, from my experience, I'll remember that. So, for example, if there's a combat and I notice another player, they ran a certain amount of space, withdrew their weapon, made an attack, and I remember the terrain was heavy and the DM allowed it. If I was that DM, I probably wouldn't remember that. Yeah. But as a player, I remember that. So when I do the exact same thing, and I'm like, no, the terrain's too rough. Like, I'll remember, hey, but that terrain, was it the same difficulty as this previous one? And the DM will say yes. And I'll remember to go, well, you allowed it last time.
Yeah.
I don't like to really argue the DM because I know it's not easy.
Yeah, yeah.
But rules like that, for me, are very easy to go, I don't like to argue a rule set when I know the DM has it consistent and knows, certain things in combat and has it down pat. I don't really worry about it too much then, because I know there's limitations. But the moment like I watch someone else get away with something that I previously was said no, I'll remember that as a player.
Yeah,
like, oh, okay.
And to be honest, I have bad memory, and so what I would say is. Josh is one of my good friends. If he calls me out on, calls me out sounds bad too. I guess if he questions on something like that and reminds me, hey, that's not how you did it last session. I'm not going to take that as an attack on me as a person. I'm going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Okay, yeah, then you pass it, no problem. Like, just rally. Don't take it personal. Just go from there, and it's fine. And again, I usually will tell my players, like, hey, if you notice an inconsistency of like a different way I'm going to run that, from another session, or even sometimes like 10 minutes later, you might rule something differently, and your player says, hey, that's not how you did that just a second ago. Most of the time, I'm going to eat crow and just be like, oh, so sorry. That's on me. You're right. And fix it. No problem. There's no reason to create, tension between you and the players. Most of the time, you're probably going to be the one that messes it up. They don't have as much to think about, so it's a lot easier for them to catch you on stuff like that. So, don't take it personal. Just, rally and go from there. These are your friends. This is a fun game. Don't have a problem. Now, what will happen is, especially if you're using, I like to use monsters that aren't in the monster manual. It's something that I took and tweaked. So in an instance, I had a game where we had some undead attacking a stagecoach as it was like rolling down. It was running down a road, full speed, and these ghost riders came in, and this was something. It was a D&D game, and I was using Warhammer Age of Sigmar ghosts type of things. So it's one of those, like, I had imported them into the game, written my own stat blocks, and talked about, and this was also like a leader character, you know what I'm saying? This was a big boss, and the cleric in the group used, what is the spell that like makes the undead run away? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyways, he used the spell that makes undead flee, and I had it only make the undead boss. He ran on, like, I guess there was 3 cavalry people, 1 boss and 2 like guardsmen who were the cavalry. He was able to get it off on 2 of the cavalry members, the boss and one of his guards. The guard ran off and pretty much was out of the fight for the rest of the time. But the big boss, I had only run away for 1 turn, and that's not how that spell worked. It was actually, I think it was supposed to be multiple turns, and you had to like pass a DC to like get him to turn around and stuff. And I was just like, nope. He runs away for 1 turn, and on the second turn, I was like, he turns around and he comes back. He's chasing the wagon again, and the player was like, that's not how that spell works. You have to like try and stop it. And pretty much I was just like, no, this is the big boss for this. Like, it was the end of the game adventure battle. You know what I'm saying? It was the final fight. I'm not going to have the big boss get hit by a cleric spell turn 1 and run off and just be like, okay, good game, guys. That was a great job. Like, it's like, okay, come on. So I altered the rules and said, this undead spirit is much stronger than, you know, that spell, and he overcame it a lot faster than what it normally would take. And the player kind of was like, like you could tell he was agitated. Not a problem. He rallied, did fine. Because I explained, like, this is not your average undead spirit. It's a boss, and also this is something you've never seen before. This isn't a, you know, monster manual type of monster. So that was my reasoning for why that spell didn't work exactly how it was supposed to in the book. So I altered the rules in that instance.
But that's the beauty part about role-playing games like this, is you can make that change.
Yep.
The only thing I would say then is if they were ever introduced to the same kind of enemy,
Yep.
then you have to make sure, like, okay, they can run away 1 turn, but then they come back the next turn.
Yeah. It has to function the same way the next time you encounter. If you run into that same, you know, cavalry big boss, yes, it has to at least, like, it doesn't not work at all. You know, so yes, that's where the consistency comes in of like, okay, you've introduced this new monster. It should work the same way every time.
And you know what I'll say? I had this to both as a player and DMing a game. I have my laptop and I use OneNote. OneNote is like, well, I use it for work too, but I use that for where they're at in the story. Certain things that I had to do off the top of my head, so that way I didn't forget it. So I use OneNote a lot to track all that stuff.
Yeah, it definitely. I usually just use like a scratch pad. I'm more of a scratch pad, take notes. Again, like I said in one of the other videos, I'll always have a little post-it note thing there, and so I can make my own post-it note because I'm always tracking times of things happening. I usually time most of my scenes because I don't want the scene to drag on for 3 hours because I mainly run one-shots. So I have like a set, like, you have 6 hours to do this adventure. So I can't let them stay in the tavern for 5 hours and then somehow do the final battle the last hour. Like, I have to get them going. So I usually will say, okay, at this set time, when my phone beeps at me, something's going to happen to get them out of this tavern if they haven't left already. So always take notes, always have a scratch pad, like a blank piece of paper or something, or even just a program there open. Josh mainly games digitally, so there's always a lot of options that way. So look into that.
And I will say, well, just the main thing with the consistency, I know I said it previously, but my whole point was, from my experience, it's a lot easier to remember those things as a player.
Yeah.
The players will remember, so when I'm DMing, that's what made me start taking a lot more notes in my OneNote. Because I realized, like, they'll remember that quirky little NPC player that I threw in to give them a beer or whatever, and that they had one banter with in a 4-hour-long session. Those players will remember that one NPC when I'm like, I just made the guy up just to get you guys your alcohol.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's not necessarily rules, but man, I take a bunch of notes for consistency's sake.
Yeah, and that's why Tim and I, one of the other bottom table tyrants, Tim and I both always, when we're playing as players, we're taking notes continuously. So like, I write down every name of like every character that we run into. It'll be like, you know, Bob the bartender and stuff like that. So it will throw the I guess that's where the story consistency comes in is, and I usually try and lead the GM instead of make them feel dumb about it. I'll be like, hey, Bob the bartender is in this tavern, and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's what I called that guy. So just reminding the GM whenever you know, if you've been 3 sessions before you went back to that tavern, remind them what they called that guy, because they don't always have the time to sit there and write down what they're naming every character, as they just make them up randomly for you to, as a quick NPC to interact with for 2 seconds.
I think that's the other part I didn't realize until I started DMing is where it's nice to, as a player, politely remind the DM of this, because, you know, everyone has their own personal jobs outside of playing board games.
Yeah.
So like they don't always remember something. So it's a polite way to go like, because I found this item back in this 3 sessions ago, and I talked to this person, I'm going to do this, and have some patience with the DM going like, more than likely they don't maybe remember all those things.
No,
so.
I like that. Like kind of explaining your logic of why you are doing this thing because of these previous things that happened. Definitely, it will help refresh their memory and be like, oh yeah. And I would say it would make it more likely that they're going to let you do the thing you want to do versus like, that sounds broken. Like, how can you do this? And you go, oh, well, it's because I got this feather from, at the market whenever we got, and you go, oh yeah. Okay, sure. Go ahead. All right, guys, that's what we got for today. Thank you. We love you. Bottom Table Tyrants out.